Hi, everyone. My name is Dani Nordin, and I'm here to talk to you today about user research for the web and applications. Just give you a little bit of background about me. Allison gave you most of the relevant information. I'm a UX designer who lives in the Boston area. I also teach UX at the General Assembly in Boston. I'm also the author of a series of books called Drupal for Designers that were released by O'Reilly in 2012. And my role is really to work with Drupal teams, the Drupal content management system, to understand their users, prototype new functionality, and have really hard conversations about what's going to be best for the people using the projects that they are creating. So one of the things I want to talk about is what happens during the UX phase of a project. The UX phase of a project happens usually somewhere in between the initial discovery phase, so the kickoff meeting, where we do the creative brief and we have a basic understanding of the audience demographics. We've established the business goals and what we want to achieve with the project. We've done the competitive analysis. During the UX phase, we take all of that information and we go deeper with it. And the goal is to really get an understanding of the people who are going to be using this product, both in the sense of the end users, the site visitors, and the people who actually have to maintain this thing day to day. So during that course, during the course of that phase, we might map out how users are going to flow through key tasks. We identify the key things that they're there to do. We uncover what information needs to be there in order to support them in that task. We also look at content, what content exists. What needs to be created, how is that content going to be organized, and what are the components of that content that we have to accommodate with the system we're developing. And ideally, at the end of it, we've got a set of assumptions and interaction standards that are going to govern the project as we move forward. And we're going to keep coming back to those assumptions and those standards and testing them as we build and we test the design and we iterate on what we've learned. So there are a few techniques I'm going to share with you today that are commonly used in the work that I do. The first is user interviews and contextual inquiry. Now, both of these can sometimes be used interchangeably in the industry. People will call an interview contextual inquiry. People will call inquiry and interview. Both of them involve talking to users about specific things they need to do related to your product or related to what your product is supposed to help with. The difference between a user interview and a contextual inquiry is really location. User interviews can happen anywhere. You could have an interview over Skype, you could have one over email, you could have it at a Starbucks. I've had interviews where I'm just IMing the person back and forth and asking them questions about a specific thing that they have to do with their day. The difference with contextual inquiry is that it happens at the person's workplace. What you're essentially doing is watching someone work with a list of key tasks that they have to do and a list of questions related to that task and observing them in their natural environment in order to get clues about how people move through complex systems. So let's talk a little bit about each of those. The main thing we want to get out of a user interview, and this is also true of contextual inquiry, is we want to separate the whims of our stakeholders from what actual users are going to find relevant. We've all had that client that wants a slideshow on the home page and a whole bunch of different buttons, and they want it because they're the CEO and that's what I get. The thing we get to do with the user interview is find out if something like that, some functionality that's being requested, is actually relevant to the people who are using the site. And we can go back to that data and say, well, that's interesting, but our research has shown us that users find this other thing really important. And if we have this other thing, we can't really accommodate the slideshow. So, what's the more important priority here? It helps you have some of those really tough conversations with stakeholders. The other thing that interviews get give us the ability to do is include perspective from all of the user types that are involved in your site. So not just the people who are visiting this site and clicking through and trying to check out and all of this other stuff. We also want to talk to the content admins, the moderators who deal with the forums. We want to deal with the people who have to actually interact with this website on a daily basis, no matter what context that's in. And we want to make their jobs easier too. This is especially true with content management systems, because so many times you've got people on the marketing team who are updating content day to day to day, and we have to make it very easy for them to add content or they just won't do it. The other thing that's nice about interviews is they give you the ability to uncover needs that aren't being addressed by the current design or the current knowledge of your team. So to give you an example of this, one of the projects that I worked on was a piece of functionality related to a learning management system. And basically it was a way for students to organize the work that they had to do in a week. And one of the things, we had built out this list of assumptions, we had a prototype almost ready, and then I started doing interviews and I found out that work that you had to do in groups was almost more important than work you had to do as an individual. And we had not taken that into account at all in our design. So we ended up basically having to completely reshift our design because we had to accommodate that group-based work and that communication piece that students needed to have with each other. So this is one of the things that we get out of user interviews that we don't get out of things like business analysis and stakeholder interviews. This idea of what people really need from the system that you're building. It also provides important data for personas, task flows, and other UX deliverables that we use throughout the site development process. All of these things, we're very used to having these made-up personas that are basically a marketing blurb about a particular person followed by a scenario. Well, when that scenario is based on real data from 5 to 10 people that you've interviewed, and these are the commonalities among them, they hold a lot more weight with both the development team and the stakeholder team than some nice story about Judy the housewife.